welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be checking out a pedal that's very quickly become one of, if not my favourite overdrive pedal. And as it says in the thumbnail, no, this isn't a tube screamer. What this is the Nobels ODR-1. Now if you've ever spent any time around the Nashville guitar scene, then you'll probably be familiar with this pedal, but I'm willing to bet quite a few of you won't have seen one of these before, especially if you're more sort of Europe way or UK based like I am. So just a little bit of background on this pedal before we hear it. Obviously this is an overdrive pedal, and this pedal was designed for Nobels by an engineer called Kai Tachibana and first went on sale in 1992. Now when they set out to design this pedal, what they were looking to emulate was the smooth breakup and volume response that you get with a classic Fender Bassman. And what they ended up coming up with is a little bit different to your standard overdrive. And to me there's two kind of standout features that make this different from, say, a Tube Screamer, a Klon or any other overdrive. And those features are: one, the spectrum control instead of a traditional tone knob, which I'll talk a bit more about in a little bit, as well as the fact that this pedal not only includes soft clipping, but also hard clipping diodes, a bit more like a distortion or fuzz. If you want to know a bit more about that, then you can watch my video talking about types of distortion. But what that means is that when you really get the gain up, not only do you get a little bit of compression and a really nice sustain, but it also does mean that you get sort of a bit of a more of a fuzzy edge or a distorted edge to your tone as well. And to my ear at least, that results in a really nice chunky tone. So that's a little bit about the pedal, but obviously you're going to want to hear it. So let's have a look at the pedal first and then check out some tones. So as you can see, it's a fairly standard 3-knob setup, although like I said, not the most traditional in the way the controls work. So on the left you've got your gain control, which is fairly standard, but as I said, once you start to crank that gain you get some hard clipping occurring as well. Then you have the spectrum control. Now unlike with a regular tone control, which normally just affects the top end of your signal, the spectrum control affects both the top end and the low mids. I'll have on screen now a graph, but as you can see, when you're maxing the control you're boosting those low mid and treble, and the same goes that when you back off that control you're cutting them. Although as you can also see from this graph, the frequencies affected when boosting and cutting do vary ever so slightly. And then of course, finally, after that bit of a tangent, the final control is level. I should also mention that this is the ODR-1 BC model, so this also has a bass cut control, which works like a shelf filter, cutting off some of the low end, which I'll also demonstrate to you. Now that bass cut control is actually accessed from inside this cavity, and it sits just under your battery. So let's hear it. Today I'm playing a Fender Telecaster, and that's going through the Nobels and into my Vox AC15, which without the pedal engaged sounds like this. And then with everything at 12 o'clock sounds like this. So even at 12 o'clock you've got quite a lot of breakup, but what you also might have noticed is this has retained a lot of the Vox's character, and it does sound very similar to me just cranking the amp. And that's because this is one of those pedals that you often see on lists of transparent overdrives, which isn't entirely true, as we've already seen talking about the spectrum control, although when you keep it at 12 o'clock like this, it is a pretty transparent drive. So I'm just going to leave the settings where they are for a minute and sweep through the spectrum control so you can see that happening. So I'll play a chord and then sweep through the pot. So going from low to high, it sounds like this. And then with everything at 12 o'clock, I'm just going to open up the pedal and engage the bass cut switch, and then do the same sweep on the spectrum control so you can hear what that sounds like. Now I actually prefer it with the bass cut engaged. I find you just get a bit more definition and clarity, but it certainly doesn't take away from this being a nice big thick sound. So I'm going to leave that bass cut engaged, and what I want to do now is just go through some of the gain. So you've heard it at 12 o'clock. I'm now going to back it off to sort of 9 o'clock or about 2 on the control knob, and that sounds something like this. So it does also nicely do some of those sort of just over the edge of breakup lower gain sounds. But for me, where this pedal really shines is when you crank the gain to sort of 3 o'clock. So then you're getting some of that hard clipping in there as well. And that sounds something like this. So as you can hear, you're starting to get some of that almost distortion-like breakup as well in there. And then when you'll really hear this is if I just crank it the full way up. And that sounds like this. So you can really hear that sort of slightly fuzzy edge that it has, which personally I absolutely adore. I find for me that with this amp and this guitar, the sweet spot is with the spectrum at 7, the drive at 7, and just the level as is. And that gives you something like this. So I think that's just an absolutely killer tone. But there you go, so there's a look at the Nobels ODR-1 BC. Now, as you can probably tell, I absolutely adore this pedal. It's very quickly become one of my favourites and has gone straight onto my pedal board. It does things that I've never really been able to get out of other drive pedals that I really love, and I think a lot of that is down to that extra hard clipping that it's doing. It certainly does smooth things out a little bit and just gives you that bit more sustain and just a nice big chunky sound. And the thing that's really amazing to me is that a pedal that sounds like this is £99. So I do really think this is, you know, a properly slept on pedal that more people need to get to know, because it is just killer sounding and a bit of a bargain, to be honest. I mean, it undercuts things like tube screamers and I much prefer this. But let me know your thoughts on this pedal and what you've heard in this video down in the comments below. And if you do decide that you want to pick one of these up yourself, then make sure you use one of my affiliate links down below, because that really helps to support the channel. But that just about does us for today. So I'm going to go and make some more noise with this pedal. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.